Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Tuesday, July 12th's Land Use Meeting and Public Hearing. If you'll all stand and rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Mr. Pratt, do we have certification of the agenda for today?
Yes, Commissioners. Chris Pratt with the County Attorney's Office. All of the items on today's agenda have been reviewed. The item A, one moment here. Item number 2 on the land use meeting agenda items, the Wildstone Ranch Cluster 35 Plan Development Plan Exemption, project file EX 2022-005, did not require specialized notice, but was noticed 24 hours prior to this hearing. Under item 3A, the resolution adopting amendments to the Douglas County Zoning Resolution, Section 23, Home Occupations, project file DR 2022-001. This had published notice accomplished June 2nd and published notice accomplished July 7th. And finally, the resolution supplementing the 2022 adopted budget to appropriate unanticipated grant revenues and appropriate committed, assigned, and unassigned fund balances in the amount of $53,574,165. That item also required no specialized notice, but was that item had published notice accomplished July 7th, 2022. My apologies. Item 3A had published notice accomplished June 2nd. Item 3B had published notice accomplished July 7th. A lot of talking. All these items have been properly noticed, and you have jurisdiction to hear them today.
Thank you, Mr. Pratt. Do any commissioners have disclosures on items for this agenda?
I have none, thank you.
No, sir.
And I have none either. With that, we'll move to item 2, the land use meeting agenda items. Item 2A is Wildstone Ranch Cluster 35 Plan Exemption, project file EX 2022-005. Heather Scott from staff. Hi, Heather.
Hi. Good afternoon, Commissioners. Heather Scott, representing Planning Services. Before you is the Wildstone Ranch Exemption, project number EX 2022-005. The owner, Duncan Stewart, is here with us today. Proposed is an exemption to create 13 lots on a 470-acre parcel. The intent of Article 9 of the Subdivision Resolution is to establish criteria and a review process whereby the Board of County Commissioners may grant exemptions from the definition of terms subdivision and subdivided lands. In this case, the exemption is allowed to establish the legal lots to finally implement an approved Cluster 35 plan. An exemption process includes submittal of an application followed by a referral agency review period. Following resolution of outstanding issues, a public meeting is scheduled before the Board of County Commissioners. No significant referral comments were received. Clarification was provided by the State Engineer's Office stating if an augmentation plan is not obtained, an exempted well permit for household use only could be sought in the non-tributary Upper Dawson Aquifer to withdraw a portion of the 32 acre-feet per year of water that was not decreed. They also recommend that the following clarification language be added to the water note. The household use wells will be exempt wells permitted to withdraw a portion of the 32 acre-feet per year of water not decreed in case number 2017 CW 3010. The site, outlined in red, is located approximately 2 miles south of the intersection of Gillian Road and southeast Cherry Creek Road. As shown on the aerial, the property is vacant agricultural land. The property is surrounded by agricultural land and residential development. As a background, the property was zoned agriculture with the inception of zoning in 1955. August 2020, the applicant purchased the property. In February 2021, the applicant submitted a Cluster 35 plan application. The intent of this application process is to provide for an alternative to the statutory 35-acre residential development in A1 zone district through an administrative site plan and then the corresponding exemption process. The C-35 plan was approved by the C-35 Plan Review Board on May 10, 2022. In May 2022, the applicant submitted the subdivision exemption request as the final step to the C-35 plan process. The exemption exhibit shows the proposed 13 parcels ranging in size. However, the density does not exceed 1 residence per 35 acres. And then lot 7 down here is the smallest lot at 20.19 acres. And the largest lot is lot 1, which is located here on the northern part of the site. That's 163 acres. The applicant will be required to record an access and utility easement that loops through the site to ensure access to all lots except lot 4, which takes direct access from southeast Cherry Creek Road. Following are site photos. This photo looks west through proposed lot 3. The site drops from southeast Cherry Creek Road down to Crowfoot Creek. This photo looks southeast towards southeast Cherry Creek Road from proposed lot 6. This is a view of the proposed loop road located between lots 5 and 6. And this is a view from the northwest, a view of the northwest from the proposed loop road in lot 1. In accordance with Section 903 of the Douglas County Subdivision Resolution, the request must comply with one of 5 listed criteria to be exempted from the definition of subdivision. Specifically, Section 903.02 authorizes subdivision exemptions for cluster 35-acre development where the density does not exceed 1 residence per 35 acres and individual lots are smaller than 35 acres. In this case, the applicant is pursuing an exemption to finalize the Cluster 35 plan application. Staff has evaluated the exemption request in accordance with Article 9 of the Douglas County Subdivision Resolution. Should the board find the criteria for the exemption are met, the following proposed conditions should be considered for inclusion in the motion. Condition number 1, prior to recordation of the exemption, any changes necessary to cause the C-35 plan to be in conformity with this exemption shall be made. Condition 2, prior to recordation of the exemption, all conditions of approval placed on the Wildstone Ranch Cluster 35 plan, case number SP 2021-009, shall be met and the C-35 plan recorded. Condition number 3, prior to recordation of the exemption, all required engineering reports, studies, and plans, and the C-35 plans improvement agreement shall be finally approved. Condition 4, prior to recordation of the exemption, all necessary access, utility, and drainage easements shall be recorded by separate instrument and noted on both the C-35 plan and the exemption exhibits. Condition number 5, prior to recordation of the exemption, a declaration of restrictive covenants shall be recorded to reserve 65 acre-feet of water within the Upper Dawson Aquifer, 65 acre-feet within the Lower Dawson Aquifer, and 65 acre-feet within the Denver Aquifer for the benefit of future landowners within this proposed development. Condition number 6, prior to the issuance of the first building permit within this exemption, all wildfire mitigation outlined in the mitigation report shall be completed and inspected by the Douglas County Building Division. Condition number 7, prior to recordation of the exemption, technical corrections to the exemption exhibit shall be made to the satisfaction of Douglas County. And condition number 8, all commitments and promises made by the applicant or the applicant's representative during the public meeting and or agreed to in writing and included within the public record have been relied upon by the Board of County Commissioners. in approving this application. Therefore, such approval is conditioned upon the applicant's full satisfaction of all such commitments and promises. This concludes staff's presentation. I am available to answer any questions. Otherwise, Duncan Stewart, the property owner, is here today for questions. Thank you.
Heather, thank you for that presentation. Any questions for staff?
Heather, I do have a question. If we could go to the conditions, I think it was number 5.
Okay?
Yes, this is the one that talks about reserving acre feet in 3 of the aquifers. And it says for the benefit of future landowners. Is that for landowners in the 13 lots that we are talking about, or other landowners?
It's for the 13 lots in this subdivision.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I have no other questions.
Further questions for staff?
No questions.
You know, Heather, I did have a question from the staff packet regarding the inquiry, or at least the comment received on May 19th, 2022 from the Colorado Division of Water Resources. They mentioned that an augmentation plan is not obtained. If an augmentation plan is not obtained, an exempt well permit for household use could only be sought in the non-tributary Upper Dawson aquifer to withdraw a portion of the 32 acre feet per year of water that was not decreed. It looks like the note was added to the already approved C35 plan and resubmitted. Has that process been concluded?
So the note has been added to the C35 plan and the exemption document at this time.
Okay.
I believe the property owner can answer this better, but they're giving them the option of one of two things. They can go in and go back through water court to get more water, or they can go with the decreed water from the Upper Dawson. From
Okay.
the upper aquifer.
Okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? Okay, with that, let's open it up to the applicant to provide an additional presentation. And sir, if you just want to state your name and address for the record, please.
My name's Duncan Stewart with Wildstone Ranch. Our property address is 11213 South East Cherry Creek Road, Franktown.
Mr. Stewart, did you have an additional presentation for us?
I don't have any additional comments to add, but
Okay.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, questions for the applicant?
No questions for the applicant.
Good?
I don't have any.
You know, so I'll ask the same question about the Colorado Division of Water Resources. Has that been addressed to, okay, go
Yes,
ahead.
sir. They wanted the note on there, and it's in both places they wanted it. The future purchasers of the lots have several options at their disposal. We are deeding over 5 acre feet per aquifer. They can do the exempt well for household use. The state water guys have said that, or they can go after an augmentation plan, or they can drill to a lower well.
Okay, great. And let me just ask, there are a number of questions that are prerequisites for today's approval. Are you in agreement with all of those conditions?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. At this point, let me open it up for any citizen comment, either in person or online. Is there any citizen comment?
Thank you, Commissioner. I have no online comment.
Okay, and I don't see any in the room on this agenda item, so I will close public comment and bring it back to the board for any further discussion and/or a motion.
So I did have some questions. I wanted to hear if there were any citizens who came and spoke. So when I read through the packet, it looks like you have withdrawn the request to put an event center in this development. Is that correct?
Not exactly. The county staff advised us we couldn't do them simultaneously. We had to complete this process first.
Okay. Because in the packet, there were lots of questions about the event center and a lot of concerns about that. So let me ask staff, if they come back after they get this exemption for an event center, will the public have another opportunity to comment on that center, on the event center?
The event center is proposed on Lot 1 at 163 acres, does not require a public process to go through. It's basically an application with staff.
Okay. I have no other questions then. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion, questions, and/or a motion?
If there are no other comments, I'd be happy to make a motion to approve the Wildstone Ranch exemption with 8 conditions as presented, project file EX2022-005.
Second.
There's a first and second on the floor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that carries 3-0. Congratulations, sir.
Thank you for your time.
And with that, we can move on to our next agenda item, which is our item 3, public hearing agenda items. And I'm wondering, County Manager DeBoard, would it make sense, I do see Martha Marshall here, if it would make sense to move up item 3B, the resolution supplementing the 2022 adopted budget? Okay, so I'm going to ask Martha Marshall to come up, and we will do item 3B, the resolution supplementing the 2022 adopted budget to appropriate unanticipated grant revenues and appropriate committed, assigned, and unassigned fund balances in the amount of $53,574. I'm sorry, $53,574,165. It's not Kim Hirsch, it's Martha Marshall. Hi, Martha.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Kim is on vacation today, so I get the pleasure of being before you. So this afternoon, I am here with a resolution to amend the 2022 adopted budget to increase appropriations for grant revenues not anticipated in the adopted budget, unspent grant balances from prior fiscal year, and unassigned fund balance for new initiatives. Colorado Revised Statute 29-1-109 provides the ability for local governments to amend the budget throughout the year as necessary. Your packet has complete details of all amendments that are being proposed today. Today's supplemental budget, it's a big one, it is $53,574,165, of which $34 million is American Rescue Plan Act funds. So that accounts for a good portion of today's supplemental. This supplemental is increasing the 2022 adopted budget by $16.1 million, or 16.1%. The new amended 2022 budget will be $193,905,926. And these numbers are on the 4th page of your agenda item. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Martha. Any questions for Martha?
Martha, I thought I heard you start off with 193 million. It's 593 million, right?
Yes, these are very, very big numbers. Yes, thank you.
So we're $593,905,926 if we approve this.
Correct. Thank
Okay.
you for that correction.
Thank you. I have no other questions.
Further questions for Martha?
No questions.
And I don't have any questions either. And with that, let me open this item up for citizen comment. Is there any citizen comment on this item, either in the room or online? Yes, sir. And sir, if you want to just come to the podium and state your name and address for the record.
Larry Glessner, 1041 MacArthur Drive, unincorporated Douglas County. What is the source of the revenue from the American Rescue Plan?
So, sir, thank you for that comment. And once comment is closed, I'll ask staff to answer that question. Any additional citizen comment?
Commissioner,
Okay.
this is Troy, your virtual host. I have no online comment.
Okay. And with that, I'll close citizen comment and ask Martha Marshall to respond to the citizen comment.
These are federal funds. I'm not sure I can go into much more detail than that.
Okay. Thank you very much. And with that, we'll bring it back to the board for any further comment, discussion, and/or a motion.
I have a motion to approve a resolution supplementing the 2022 adopted budget to appropriate unanticipated grant revenues and appropriate committed, assigned, and unassigned fund balances in the amount of $53,574,165.
Second, wish to speak in favor of the motion.
Please.
So Larry, yeah, this is the American Rescue Plan that was passed by Congress February of 2021, March of 2021. and $68.5 million for Douglas County alone. I do not recall what was provided to the state of Colorado, but essentially every large municipality and county in Colorado, but also in the entire country, received it. And that had, well, it was obviously trillions of dollars spent out of Congress that, quite frankly, we're still in the process of allocating here in the county. It was substantial, 16%, with this second tranche of money that came in, obviously impact to our budget. So it's something we've taken pretty serious about how to invest that for our futures.
Any further discussion? Okay, do we have a second?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we have a first and second on the floor. No further discussion. All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that carries 3-0. Thank you, Martha.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move back to item 3A on our public hearing agenda items, a resolution adopting amendments to the Douglas County Zoning Resolution, Section 23, Home Occupations, Project File DR 2022-001. CJ Gates presenting for staff. Hi, CJ.
Hey, Commissioners, thank you. First things first, I would like to hand out some additional correspondence that we have received since the July memo that I sent to you all. So,
Thanks.
If I could, CJ, Chris Pratt with the Attorney's Office for the record. Is this item already in the online records for this?
that's it is online on the project file for the public consumption. Yep.
We will mark it as Exhibit 1 for the record. It is a packet of, I have not counted the pages. Do you know how many?
I don't off the top of my head, sorry, Chris.
It is
but
a packet of correspondence, emails, and pictures that is already available online.
Correct.
Thank you.
Good evening, Commissioners. CJ Gates representing Community Development. The project before you today is DR 2022-001. Next slide. The request is for approval of the amendments to the Douglas County Zoning Resolution, Section 23, Home Occupations. Per Zoning Resolution, Section 109, the Board shall evaluate the proposed amendments, referral comments, staff report, the Planning Commission recommendation, and public testimony, and shall approve with modifications, table for further study, remand to the Planning Commission, or deny the amendment proposal. In June 2021, the Board of County Commissioners requested that staff attend a BOCC work session to provide information on home occupations. On November 16th, 2021, the board held a live town hall meeting to solicit public input regarding home occupations. On January 25th, 2022, the board reviewed proposed changes and directed staff to send the project out on referral. The referral period began on February 9th, 2022 and ended March 9th, 2022. Approximately 500 referral agents, which includes all HOAs who have registered to receive referrals, were asked to comment on the proposed changes. Staff received comments from several referral agencies requesting to be notified or take part in the permitting process. Staff held 2 public meetings to solicit public input and help answer questions. Both meetings were very well attended. The board held a post-referral work session with staff on April 12th, at which time the board directed staff to adjust the proposal based on the feedback during the referral process. These changes include removing language allowing for signage for the business on the property. The board also asked staff to amend the language regarding gross vehicle weight rating and provide a graphic showing how this works. At this time, the language regarding number of trips was also adjusted to help simplify the regulations. Lastly, outcomes from this work session also include the implementation of online survey to solicit public input and to hold another live town hall meeting. The board held a live town hall meeting on the proposed changes on May 11th. This meeting was held both in person and virtually. It was estimated that over 1,000 people attended virtually based on the analytics that were collected by our public affairs team. Following the live town hall meeting, staff attended another board work session where the board directed staff to proceed with public hearings. The Planning Commission hearing for this item was held on June 20th, 2022, where the Planning Commission voted to continue the item until the July 11th hearing date. The Planning Commission directed staff to gather data from the several public surveys that the county conducted and present it to the Planning Commission at the July 11th hearing. Staff presented the public survey data to the Planning Commission within the staff report for the July 11th hearing date. The Planning Commission then recommended the amendments be tabled for further study. Under the current regulations, a Class 2 home occupation can do business at their home and not work from their home. The proposed regulation would allow the Class 2 home occupation permit holder to work from their home rather than only at their home. As the regulations are currently, Section 23 of the Douglas County Zoning Resolution does not give any direction to Class 2 home occupation permit holders on how covenants, conditions, or restrictions that may be in place within their specific neighborhood fit within the regulations. The proposed language aims to inform Class 2 home occupation permit holders that if a resident receives a permit from the county, it does not give them an exemption from any applicable covenants, conditions, restrictions, architectural design standards, or other private agreement and obligations. Within Douglas County, neighborhoods that have these types of restrictions can be more strict than the Douglas County Zoning Resolution, and even if a resident receives a Class 2 home occupation permit, they would still have to follow all neighborhood restrictions. In this specific case, enforcement of the neighborhood restrictions would fall to the HOA or neighborhood enforcing body. This is a good opportunity to discuss some of the feedback we have received. There has been comments from concerned citizens that the character of the neighborhood is going to change and become more industrial. For this reason, we added a provision that the accessory structure used in accordance with the within the Class 2 home occupation permit would need to be in character with the neighborhood. As the regulations are currently, a Class 2 home occupation can only do business out of 1,500 square feet of an accessory structure. The proposed amendments would raise that square footage allotment to 3,000 square feet. Under the proposed regulations, if a homeowner had a 6,000 square foot barn, they could potentially use 3,000 square feet of that structure to do business and store equipment. It is important to note here that accessory structures have been allowed in these zone districts, and this amendment does not change that. This amendment only affects the amount of space that can be used within that accessory structure. Currently, within the Class 2 home occupation regulations, there are no limitations on the number of trips the Class 2 home occupation permit holder can make. The proposed changes would limit the permit holder to 8 one-way trips from employees, contractors, customers, deliveries, or other non-resident related traffic associated with the home occupation. For example, if a home occupation permit holder received a delivery, that would count as 2 one-way trips, one coming and one going. Current regulations do not address vehicle sizes. The proposed amendment would limit the home occupation permit holder to use vehicles or trailers that have a gross vehicle weight rating, also known as GVWR, which is the maximum weight of the vehicle, its passengers, and the cargo in the vehicle that does not exceed 26,000 pounds, as well as the combination of vehicles and trailers used for the home occupation or deliveries to the property shall not exceed a gross combined vehicle weight rating, also known as GCVWR or GCWR, which is the maximum weight of the vehicle, the trailer, all passengers, and the cargo in both the tow vehicle and the trailer of more than 40,000 pounds. We have received many comments on the GVWR. As a result, staff developed this infographic to demonstrate various vehicle weight ratings. The GVWR is not how much the vehicle weighs, but rather what it is rated for. This includes the weight of the vehicle, its passengers, and the cargo weight in the vehicle. Next slide. The same applies to the vehicle and its trailer. As within vehicles, trailers also have a GVWR, which can be easily found for the trailer year and make. The proposed regulations would limit the total GCVWR of the vehicle and the trailer to 40,000 pounds. The referral period began on February 9th, 2022 and ended March 9th, 2022. Staff hosted a public workshop on March 9th, 2022, which included approximately 26 attendees. Staff also hosted an additional meeting on March 29th, 2022 to further discuss the proposed changes with the public. The Douglas County Public Affairs team also conducted several surveys that the public accessed through the May 11th Live Town Hall meeting, on the county webpage, and social media. Throughout the process of this amendment, staff received over 130 written public comments. In general, the feedback we received were concerns about losing the residential character of the neighborhoods, the potential of creating conflict between HOA and county regulations. For example, the county would allow something that the HOA does not. Therefore, the HOA would need to regulate. Concerns about increased traffic in residential areas, the ability to enforce these regulations, questions as to who is requesting these changes and why. Lastly, to support for small businesses to operate without paying rent for a separate storage space. After evaluating the proposed revisions, referral comments, staff report, the board may approve with modifications, remand to the Planning Commission, or deny. This concludes my presentation, Commissioners. We are here for any questions if you may have any.
Thank you, CJ, for that presentation. Any questions for staff?
Not right now, thank you.
No questions for staff.
Okay. I will reserve my questions for some additional comment. Let me open it up at this time to any citizen comment. Is there any citizen comment? Yes, sir.
My name is Neil McLaughlin, McLaughlin. Live in MacArthur Ranch. I've been to several town hall meetings. I appreciate the work that staff has done. There have been meetings all over the place. But having read the zoning regulations, the proposed wording of the rezoning and so on, I'm still kind of confused. Hang on just a minute. I think that most of the public testimony and the surveys that the staff has presented seem to be predominantly against the proposal. I hope that we hear that. Still, I'm confused. I heard last night in the Planning Commission, we still haven't got this thing right. They said we can do a better job. And I think that's what the Planning Commission said in there for further study. One of the things that was brought up in the Planning Commission is that perhaps there could be some modified use by special review instead of what we have now for the Class 2. If we did some sort of a special review, we give the neighbors a chance and we give the HOAs a chance to communicate with the applicant, to take some of the responsibilities away from the director of planning, and because he has to approve or deny these things, it's difficult for one person to do that. If we had a special review, I think we could get a little more involvement in it. Enforcement of the guidelines or the regulations, very vague. We're not going to sit there neighbor to neighbor and we're going to count trips in and out of the neighborhood. It's not going to happen. It shouldn't have to happen. I would just please the planning commission says, let's please get this thing right. Please don't approve something right now that, it isn't right. I guess that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLaughlin. Any further citizen comment? Yes, sir.
Larry Glushner, 1041 MacArthur Drive. In reviewing the proposal, I've seen no provisions for monitoring compliance, enforcing compliance, or remedies for non-compliance. Current public comment to date is running 80 to 90% against the proposal. I recommend that the Commission retain the existing exemption review process and reject the proposal at hand. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Additional citizen comment? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Catherine Magaki. I live in unincorporated northern Douglas County since 1989 on 5 acres. I've attended 7 meetings on this particular issue. It was explained last night at the Planning Commission meeting that current zoning does not allow a small business to park a trailer anywhere on their property overnight, either inside or outside of a building today. And it has been testified here several times by people in favor of the zoning change that this restriction of trailer parking is the problem. I don't understand why we don't just change the existing zoning of 1,500 square feet to allow for a trailer to be parked inside an existing 1,500 square foot commercial structure, but why the solution is that we have to double the size of the existing commercial allowed space to 3,000 square feet, which it provides for a 30 by 100 perimeter building that could be up to 35 feet high on an acreage as small as 4.5 feet, which would impact a neighbor no matter where you put it on your property. Second, it was explained also last night in the process to the Planning Commission that use by special review is not currently available to the parties that are in favor of this current zoning. And I don't understand why we don't change use by special review to provide access to these parties to this long-standing remedy without having to immediately go to doubling the zoning situation, square footage-wise and employees, et cetera. The county, in one of the meetings I was in, authorized a poll to be taken, and it was asked during the previous Planning Commission meeting what the results of that poll were. They were presented last night. The county's question, 1 of 4, to the residents was, an accessory structure on residential property should be allowed for business use. That is a direct quote. The results were 7 agree, 9 greatly agree, 10% disagree, and 69% greatly disagree that a structure should be situated on a residential property. That's the county's question. The results were 79.62% of the respondents did not agree with that sentence. Additionally, CJ was kind enough to provide information on the residents that wrote in as a result of the initial DR 22001 letter to the community. But there has not been any numbers provided to the community of the results of those people that wrote in. My understanding from someone who tallied them up and did the best that they could, that 119 people were against the change in zoning as a result of the write-in letters, and 14 were in favor for a total of 135 responses.
Ms. Magaki, your time has expired, but if you want to wrap up for us.
All right. So in the zoning planning, the Planning Commission last night requested, they were initially 50-50, and then they decided to come down on the side requesting additional review on this particular issue. Because as they pointed out, this zoning is kind of forever. And they thought that there were other solutions to this issue without impacting so many residents for the benefit of what seemed to be quite a few residents. I'm in favor of business. I'd love to see a solution that doesn't require such a drastic change, because there's been no consideration for the future and how many more commercial buildings are now going to be built on residential properties, because the footprint is now 50% larger and is therefore much more attractive to somebody who's running a business to move in.
Thank you, Ms. McGuckie.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Further citizen comment?
Thank you, guys.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Karen Hickman, Hickman, and I live in unincorporated Douglas County, and I'm here today representing our HOA.
Thank you, Ms. Hickman. And let me just give council an opportunity to identify the exhibit for the record.
Thank you. Sorry for the interruption. Chris Pratt with the County Attorney's Office. You have been handed, members, a photograph, a one-page photograph with some trees, cars, and structures that's been labeled Exhibit 2 for the record.
Thank you, Mr. Pratt. And Ms. Hickman, since you represent an HOA, you have 6 minutes.
Okay, thank you. This referral should, it's my strong recommendation that this referral should be remanded back.
Actually, excuse me, Chair, point of order.
Sure.
Ms. Hickman represents an HOA. Can she identify the position he holds with that HOA and that HOA?
Yes, I'm president of the Grandview Estates HOA.
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome. And we were basically formed in 2001, and we're a nonprofit with the state of Colorado, and we also are a Section 528 with the IRS, and we file tax returns even. So. Again, this referral, it's my strong recommendation that this referral should be remanded back to the planning commissioners for further restudy. We didn't understand that that was a possibility today, but that's my recommendation. And for the following reason. There's been ongoing confusion by all involved, which was apparent at the planning commissioners hearing last night, including confusion with some of the explanations by county staff, which I'm not being critical of, as far as the different processes between building and permitting, planning and zoning when questioned by the planning commissioners. The online survey results were also questioned by one planning commissioner who asked why they included all zoning designations, as it appeared to skew the results. There's also ongoing confusion over the role an HOA should play in zoning enforcement. A community can't magically form an HOA or even easily change its covenants, since both require the majority vote of all of its residents, and many don't even have the financial resources to do so. Many are voluntary, non-mandatory with minimal dues, and were formed decades ago when covenants weren't necessary. The only criteria is being a good neighbor. Many property owners simply ignore their HOA covenants, even on Highlands Ranch today, or out of ignorance or sometimes deliberately. There is even a lack of understanding of the issue coined as pitting neighbor against neighbor, which was discussed last night, that the magic pill to resolve all issues was simply reaching out to your neighbor to discuss it. It doesn't work that way. All communities have examples, and a violator doesn't always want to cooperate. There is strong opposition to this amendment that many communities and property owners have simply given up because of fear of retaliation, or the fact that the amendment appears to be kind of a done deal, or rumored to be a done deal. So what is the real purpose behind this amendment as requested by the BOCC? Is it to resolve all zoning issues all zoning designations that are faced with enforcement and business permitting? Or is it also due to the lack of resources needed in planning and zoning since the formation of the new health department that is now in charge of restaurant permitting and inspections, and in 2023 will also have to cover the same for over 14,000 septic systems throughout unincorporated Douglas County? Colorado Revised State Statute 37-92-6025, which is overseen by the Colorado Division of Water Resources, does not allow the use of groundwater for commercial and business purposes unless specifically permitted. However, the county even historically has enforced this statute when reviewing applications for use by special review until recently. So can the county simply pick and choose when they want to follow it or decide at some point not to follow it? It just appears that there's some confusion with that also. One PC at last night's hearing indicated we can do better. Instead of imposing further unnecessary regulations on all property owners, the PCs suggested twice now that the county utilize the special use by special review process. USRs have already been utilized historically by the county for that very purpose. Jefferson County even utilizes their Board of Adjustments to resolve similar issues. The issue with what is wrong with the entire process also involves the fact that any entity won't get involved in another entity's business. The CDWR won't enforce the county zoning resolutions, and vice versa, unless reported. The same is true today with Tri-County Health and septic system violations. South Metro Fire and Rescue won't inspect or take action unless asked by the county to inspect a Class 2 home occupation. Since there are only 32 permits requested since 1995, there are hundreds of unpermitted businesses that possibly need to be inspected. Commissioner Layton, you oversee the new wildlife mitigation initiative for the county. The photo I provided is from a property in my community.
Did you mean the Wildfire Initiative or wildlife?
Wildfire.
Yeah.
I thought I said. I'm sorry.
Well, I hope we're not mitigating wildlife.
No, I thought I said wildfire. I'm sorry.
It's okay.
But yes, you're correct. The photo I provided is from a property in my community that today is much worse. It has an open zoning violation for several years and is legal. It poses a significant wildfire risk. I won't go into the details now, but how does a community get the attention of the BOCC to change the number of stored vehicles, trailers, RVs that are allowed that aren't part of a business where the number is currently unlimited? And why is this allowed for a non-business owner, but a business owner is not allowed to park a trailer in a permitted garage or anywhere on their property? It doesn't make
Ms.
any
Hickman,
sense.
your time is up. If you could wrap up your comments for us, please.
Sure. While not perfect, the current processes seem to be working today. If not, why not? Again, what was the real purpose for the amendment? To assist all property owners? I also want to thank county staff as they tried to assist property owners during this process while they worked at the will of the BOCC, who were elected by Douglas County voters to work on behalf of all property owners. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hickman. Further questions or comments or citizen comment from the gallery here? Thanks, Ms. Hickman. Any other citizen comment?
My name is Allison Biggs, B-I-G-G-S, and I live in unincorporated Douglas County. I hadn't planned on speaking, but I decided to encourage you all to listen carefully to the testimony you've heard so far. I think it points to the recommendation from the Planning Commission that this whole thing needs further study. We can do better. There are other solutions that seem like they will meet the need of the people who raised this issue in the first place without hurting the rest of us who have lived in rural residential areas and relied on rural residential restrictions, et cetera, from when we moved in. I think we can do better. I am concerned about the county's stated lack of interest in enforcing the way the current proposed changes are written. Homeowners associations cannot possibly monitor everything that is being proposed under these proposed changes. The person who approves them has only 10 days to approve or deny a permit. So that would almost require the homeowners association to sit there and look at what's being proposed on a daily basis in order to try to have any kind of an input into it. So I think you've heard plenty of reasons to table this for further review if you don't want to deny it, which would be my preference. But it certainly deserves additional attention. We can do better to meet the needs that are expressed by bringing this forth, but also not hurt those of us who have lived here for a long time under rural residential. Don't do this to us without finding a better way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Biggs. Further citizen comment? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Lori Bequet, Bequet, and I live here in Castle Rock. And I'm in favor of the proposed changes. The changes will help small contractors that just need to use space inside their garages. If someone's allowed to come and go with a personal trailer on their property, they should also be allowed to use a work trailer. It sounds like just from last night's comments at the Planning Commissioners meeting, that some people were concerned about having narrow roads in their neighborhood. Like, I think it was Surrey Ridge and MacArthur Ranch. And it sounds like they do have genuine road access issues, but it doesn't seem to have anything to do with the home occupations. If this doesn't pass, these changes, then they're still going to have the same road issues. So it seems to make more sense that they could have their HOA put limits on all vehicles going, on their property or in their neighborhood, not just the home occupation ones, work vehicles. And I hope you vote yes to these changes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bequet. Further citizen comment? Yes, ma'am.
Jenna Bacon, Parker. Commissioners, I'm in favor of the proposed changes. The minor proposed changes would allow trailers to be used in association with a business and would allow parking and storage of equipment inside of a garage or accessory building. The proposed truck and trailer weight limits and trip limits provide limits where currently there are none. The current regulations allow a home-based business to use 50% of the first floor area of their home. And that's a use by right under Class 1 home occupations. I think that using my garage should be a use by right. But if that's not possible, then we're happy to get the required fire inspection, building inspection, and annual county inspection to be allowed to do this. We all know that small businesses are essential to Douglas County. And Commissioner Thomas, on your website, you state that during your 2 decades of property management, you signed the front of checks to small business owners who were necessary to your business, such as plumbers, electricians, landscapers, and general contractors. And I hope you know that it's likely that many of those contractors were home-based businesses, and they likely stored equipment and trailers at their own personal residences without knowing they were doing anything wrong. Please don't stand in the way of small business owners making a living. Please take away some of the roadblocks. The proposed changes are minor. And I want to assure all of you that we are good neighbors. If you were to drive by my house today, you would never know that inside of our garage, there's a little empty space where we used to park our work trailer equipment and supplies before we got a violation and moved it out. If we were able to get a home occupation permit, you could drive by my house then and you would never know the difference. You would never know that inside that empty space, there's now a trailer, not now, but would be a trailer and equipment happily back inside the space. If approved, the one thing you might notice is that my husband Troy just might be outside playing with our kids because he would be able to get home 2 hours earlier at night because he wouldn't be traveling and commuting back and forth to a storage space when we have the space inside of our garage. Please vote yes on this today. I feel that no further study is needed. The zoning department has studied the crap out of this thing. I believe you guys have taken a lot of time to study this. What else is there to study? They've had meetings and more meetings and revised and revised. Please vote yes on this today. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bacon. Further citizen comment? Okay, let me ask if there's any citizen comment online.
Thank you, Commissioner. I do have online citizen comment. First person is Troy Bacon. Troy, you are unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Troy Bacon, Parker View Estates, Parker, Colorado. Commissioners, I'm a small business owner with truck and equipment trailers. I have a simple request. I would like to work from home and park my equipment and supplies at my property inside my garage rather than spending thousands of dollars a month on storage and several additional hours a week driving to and from storage. It makes no sense that businesses with employees and customers coming to the property are allowed, but I am not even allowed to make one trip a day off my property with my work trailer. I provide a good service to the community installing drought-resistant native grasses and wildflowers. The proposed changes would make a positive impact on my business and family life. So please vote yes. To address the neighbor against neighbor issue, it would be much more neighborly to have conversations with each other rather than hiding behind binoculars and sending photographs to the county or posting negativity on community email or social media. It's not always the county's role to micromanage its citizens. If people like that kind of structure, then they can form or strengthen their HOA. Sorry about that huge echo. Hope everybody understood.
Thank you, Mr. Bacon. Further online comment?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. The next person I have is Kim Avery. Kim, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
This is Kim Avery, and I'm at 11555 Tomahawk Road, Parker. You can hear me, right?
Yes, we can, ma'am.
Okay, good. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I am in favor of the changes. We moved to unincorporated Douglas County and found a home without an HOA. An HOA should have their own guidelines dictating what is acceptable within their subdivision. An HOA should not have guidelines that influences everyone in the county. We are a small business owner who depends on these changes. In addition, we have 2 employees whose livelihoods depend on these changes. We should be able to load our trailer with tools and materials for our business, drive out of our driveway legally, and go anywhere in Douglas County to complete a homeowner's project. We should be able to bring our tools and trailer, and legally store them in the shop. The entire shop should be open to be used for the business if we desire. Just one side note, a Douglas County school bus driver can drive their bus home and park it in their driveway. A police officer can park their squad car on their property when they are off duty, but we can't park our business trailer in the barn or on our property next to our horse trailer. Douglas County is supposed to be pro-business. These changes make sense for home-based businesses and neighbors of home-based businesses. Please vote yes on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Further online comment?
Yes, next in line is Kelly Pointer. Kelly, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Kelly Pointer. I live in Highlands Ranch, which is unincorporated Douglas County, at 10193 Cheris Glen Lane. I have been involved with home occupation regulations since a complaint was filed against my Class 1 home occupation in February of 2019. I met with Commissioner Thomas in March of 19, Commissioner Layden in May of 21, and Commissioner Teal in February of 22. I realize that Class 1 home occupations are not in scope for the discussion today. However, I do think that they're relevant because there is a big piece that's missing here still from Douglas County, and that is education of both Class 1 and Class 2 home occupations. The commissioners and staff, I appreciate all their efforts and time reviewing all this, and they chose to delve into Class 2 home occupations first, which is what the scope is, what is being discussed today. And I think what's really missing here is some balance. And I really can understand where both sides are coming from. So there's got to be a way to find some balance and support these small business owners, as well as folks who don't want their neighborhoods to drastically change and have a lot of traffic. There's got to be a way to balance both of those, and then also educate the public. And most people probably don't know the difference between a Class 1 home occupation and a Class 2 home occupation, and I believe that's the responsibility of Douglas County to do that. So, I've heard public comment and support and against this resolution, and I see both sides. So it's not an easy task. I appreciate everything that staff has done. And we'll see what decision the commissioners vote on today. I'm also always available, as I have been for 3 years, to discuss Class 1 home occupations. But I understand that you're delving into Class 2 as first, and that's currently what's in scope. Thank you for your time. I hope everyone has a great afternoon.
Ms. Pointer, thank you for being with us and for your years of engagement on this critical issue. We certainly appreciate it. Further online comment?
Yes, sir. I have Keith Tillman. Keith, you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing me to speak, commissioners. I'm Keith Tillman from MacArthur Ranch and have been involved in this since we became aware of it. I won't reiterate some of the excellent comments made, in particular by Karen Hickman. And I will say that I commend staff at trying to put some limitations on the business uses within neighborhoods. Putting limitations and constraints on people wanting to do business is a good idea. I'm in favor of a number of the changes that they're talking about in terms of trips and weight limits. One that I would not be in favor of is the increase in the square footage of accessory buildings and the issues that brings up. And just wanted to say that, particularly after attending the Planning Commission meeting last night and the confusion that both staff and commission members there had, I can't imagine this is ready for prime time or ready to be moving forward as it is. Again, I'm in favor of some of the limitations. Would request that you be looking at table or continuance, looking also at the use by special review and how that plays into this. And remind you that over 90% of the respondents to any of the surveys have been against this, although if they have more knowledge and understand what these limitations are, you may get all those folks in favor, but not at this point. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Tillman. Further citizen comment?
Thank you, Commissioner. I have no further online comment.
Okay, thank you, Troy. And with that, I'll close all citizen comment and bring it back to the board for further discussion and or motion.
Would you like to start? Oh, I'll start then. So we need to get this right. We heard that said yesterday. We heard that said today. Commissioners, additional study is not going to get this right. We've been at this for 9 months. I fully realize the Planning Commission has been at this for a month. We've been at this for 9 months. We can get this right. I'm sure we can get this right. We keep seeing over and over again extraneous information being introduced. I mean, I appreciate there's a disconnect there. I'm sure we could work on this too. But we keep seeing information like this being introduced to this conversation that isn't germane here. And thank you, Ms. Pointer, for pointing out that she has an advocacy that is different than the subject at hand. But this is something we keep seeing about. This has been endemic. Over and over again, we heard from several people today the belief, and I believe that you individuals do believe that this will allow, excuse me, I'm so shocked by it, I choked on it. You believe that this will allow for a commercial building on rural residential properties. I mean, we heard several of you state it. You're nodding your heads right now. And yet, we have the change here that is very clear that a Class 2 home occupation, and now I am quoting the amendment, does not change the residential character of the dwelling, lot, or neighborhood, or allow a resident to work from home. And Commissioners, that is from Section 2304. I do think, actually I do really agree with a lot of the comments about elements of confusion. And quite frankly, Commissioners, I would like to, I do have a motion to offer modifications to the amendment. First modification would be to strike sections 230501.01, as well as strike 2305.01.02. These are the areas that talk about the 3,000 square foot limit that have caused so much confusion. And I think we had good intentions to put those in under staff advice, but it's so obvious. They're just causing confusion. This is the nature of the comments that we've heard pertaining to a 3,000 square foot commercial structure. That is not in here at all. So again, I would offer that motion to modify. I would also, oh shoot, I had it. I would also move to modify 230509, remove the amendment and revert to original language. Those are my motions to modify the amendment as presented. I do ask for a second.
So we have a first on the floor. Is there a second?
I'm not going to second that. And I'll talk about that later if you'd like.
I'm pleased on the level of professionalism and decorum to second the motion. Just to clarify for those online and in person, a second doesn't mean that I am in favor, but for the purposes of decorum and professionalism, I will second that motion. So there's a first and second on the floor. Is there further discussion?
Yes. You know, and those of you who listen into our meetings often hear me say that I'm seconding because of decorum. The reason I would not second this for decorum is that we received a legal counsel before we came in here today. And based on that legal advice that we received, I am not going to second that because I think legal advice is important and needs to be followed. And that's why I would not second the motion.
So let's speak to that issue. We do have Attorney Pratt here with us. Attorney Pratt, do you want to provide us some of the legal background with regard to process here?
Yes, Commissioner, if I understand what's being asked, the Planning Commission has certified the amendment to the zoning resolution that came before you through their meeting last night. You have the authority to review that and decide what to do with that item. State statute requires that if you wish to make amendments to what was certified by the Planning Commission, substantial amendments, then that should go back to the Planning Commission before you approve it. Now, the statute does not define what a substantial amendment is. That is within your discretion to make a determination of.
Okay, Commissioner Teal.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So thank you, Mr. Pratt. Appreciate that. Advisory Council. What is substantial? I guess is a good conversation for us to have right now. My assertion would be that these are not substantial changes. These are in nature de minimis. We are reverting entirely back to currently existing language for one of the proposed changes. So my assertion would be that this is not a substantial change due to the de minimis nature of it. Were we to, let's say, Commissioners, we were to decide, hey, let's get this figured out right now. And let's talk about, well, let's go to 6 trips. Let's go to 10 trips. Were we to have that kind of conversation in terms of trips for employees? Were we to war game and redefine the maximum square footage, go bigger, go lower, those, I believe those would be substantial. But in this instance, I do not see these as substantial changes, and I would assert to you that they are de minimis in nature and therefore do not constitute substantial changes to the language offered.
Further discussion.
So I would still like to request that if there's going to be any changes, that we go back through the process, go to the Planning Commission, get input so we get this right. That's what the Planning Commission asked, is that we go back, review it, and get it right. And I don't see the rush in doing this. Let's just do it right.
Well, then my assertion would be, per my original comments, Commissioners, we can get this right now. We can do this. We can, by making these changes, this can be a yes if. Because we've been at this for 9 months now, since this was first introduced. We do have at least one business, but quite frankly, despite all of the comments that have come in, we know that there are several businesses that are under threat of having their county government come in and stop their business use on their own personal property. We know this. We know we have one. We have one in the Bacons in terms of they were the original petitioner that brought this forward. So, whereas we really haven't had a demonstrative damage shown by those who are speaking against it. The true substantial objection is it's a change. Well, of course it's a change. We heard from one of the individuals speaking in opposition that zoning is forever. Well, obviously it's not forever. That's what we're talking about doing here today. We are talking about making a change to our zoning resolution. Commissioners, we've been at this for 9 months. Let's make these changes. Personally, I believe these changes that pertain to, the dealing with that maximum square footage, dealing with the number of allowed trips, yeah, we could probably get that better. We definitely could. Those are features to this amendment. The bulk of the amendment I would put before you, Commissioners, is to be found in section, and I do want to get this right, in section 2304, and does not change the residential character of the dwelling, lot, or neighborhood, and allows a resident to work from home. That is the substantial change. That is actually the thing that has caused violations before. So I would advocate that the modification proposed are not substantial changes. They will stand up to legal review because they're taking away from a written, presented, and certified amendment and are not adding anything of substance. And we can get to yes if with these changes. I'm sure of it.
You're speaking my language, and I appreciate that. And that's a very persuasive argument, Commissioner Teal. Let me ask, so in terms of the Planning Commission hearing, so CJ, can you provide us maybe a more detailed recap of the conversation from the other night, final vote, and current recommendations?
Yeah, Commissioner. At the end of the Planning Commission, they did vote to recommend for further study, and I believe that was unanimous. There were six Planning Commission members there last night. They had extensive conversations, like a lot of the citizens here today. They, did mention the use by special review as an option. At first, it was 50-50. It seemed, in my opinion, 50 to deny and 50% to approve, and the to remand, as far as to remand for further study came up, and it seemed like they all unanimously agreed to that this does need further study, but that was their opinion.
And has that updated Planning Commission outcome been included in today's packet for public review?
No.
Okay. Well, I think that's important, and it's a conversation for the record that those that we have appointed to the Planning Commission have had their hearing and provided those comments so that the public can review that, and we can get a better sense of where they're at as well. Commissioner Teal, did you have a comment?
Well, yeah, and it's because we did hear several times the comments from the Planning Commission of applying a use by special review. Now, Commissioner, you had introduced that very early in our process, and I mean, do we feel the need to clarify for the public the fact that that would not be legally sufficient? It was the opinion of legal counsel that would not be legally sufficient.
Why don't you walk through that argument, Commissioner Teal?
Okay, so I thought that was a silver bullet once we first heard it. You introduced it for formal discussion, but it was the opinion of county council. We couldn't. State statutes prevents local review for land use. And so for building use, so perhaps we went about this from a building code perspective in order to allow trailers to be stored inside barns and garages, et cetera. Then that could be a use by special review, which we can totally consider. The only problem is this zoning regulation still prevents people from working at home. And by the way, I do realize, and we could probably have Michael Carey comment on this because we've talked about, it's okay if you're an accountant. We had heard from a home publisher before. But I don't know, I've reread this many times. And actually, no, it doesn't allow you to just work from home. So commissioners, the three of us have worked from home since I was sworn in on this board. Now, I live in the incorporated municipality of Castle Rock. Commissioner Layden, you live in the incorporated municipality of Lone Tree. But Commissioner Thomas, you've been working from home from unincorporated Douglas County as a county commissioner when I suppose you did not have to get a Class 2 home occupation permit. But again, it goes to the point that right now, you can't work for home if you choose to get a Class 2 home occupation permit.
So those are compelling arguments. I'm wondering if we can hear directly from council about the applicability of USR based upon Commissioner Teal's comments. And then maybe Mr. Carey could also provide some additional information about that current restriction around working from home and the breadth of that.
I'm not entirely sure I understand the question being asked about USRs. Could USRs be used for home occupation? Is that the question being asked?
For a land use.
The staff may have more to say on this than me. The only restriction I'm aware of with land uses is if we were to try and do some sort of variance request. Those would not be allowed for a land use.
Steve Koster for staff, and that's the conversation I remember with Lance Ingalls. Is we discussed the idea of a going to the Board of Adjustment with a variance, and it's a variance for land use that's not allowed, but our use by special review regulations would rely on a different kind of legal framework. So and we actually do allow only in the A1 zone district a use by special review kind of class 3 home occupation basically right now.
So thank you for that. So Steve, am I understanding this right, that this board could actually entertain the notion of a USR to perhaps address some of these issues?
I believe that that's correct, yes, that the board could look at creating a use by special review process for something around this.
Okay. So the second question that Commissioner raised was the notion of, can you work from home currently under our zoning resolution? Mr. Carey?
Currently, the way the regulations are designed is for people to work at the property. So as you pointed out, an accountant, they might have someone that stops by and drops off their paperwork to file taxes, or they may get them emailed to them, something like that. They're actually performing the work at the property. When we talk about from the property, it's those businesses where they would be staging a business from the property, those that need to go off-site to do the work. They may come home, load up a trailer, attach that trailer to their truck, go work off the property for the day, maybe come back during lunch if they need some additional supplies, then go back out, come back at the end of the day. The way that it is designed today is for the resident to work at the property, and if they've got employees for their business, for the employees to come there and work at the property, not to stage a business from the property.
Okay, so that makes sense to me. And, for all of those that we represent in the rural communities, I think about the challenges associated with commute time and being restricted in terms of being able to come and go. If you can currently work at your home, but that you can't leave and take any trips associated with your business, that seems like a pretty significant overreach of government and a pretty specific limitation. I think what's compelling to me is that I believe Douglas County is open for business. I believe in efficiency when it comes to that business. And I'm also compelled by the notion that Commissioner Teal raised that this cannot change the residential character of a community. And if it does change the residential character of a community, there is a process in place which you, sir, enforce to ensure that that residential character remains the same. Questions that I still have, and I think the citizens that are here with us today and others have raised this well, are a couple. One is around the issue of monitoring. Well and good from just a paper standpoint to look at the rules and regs and say, okay, this makes sense. But on a practical level in a rural community, who's counting the trips? And I don't know if you want, that's sort of a rhetorical question, but to me that seems like we didn't have an answer in front of the PC last night, and maybe we don't have an answer today. But did you want to address that?
Michael Carey for Planning Services again. We go out once a year for home occupation permits to do an annual review before a permit is renewed. So there's that one point in time where we're checking physically on site. If we received a complaint later on that, they're operating outside the bounds of a permit, we could have staff, potentially go out and sit and try to monitor traffic. But those in the neighborhood that are being impacted by those things, whether it's early in the morning or late at night, where they're seeing all this additional traffic, we may be looking to them to, provide that information to us that they believe someone is operating outside the scope of their permit.
Okay. Well, and forgive me for getting into the granular detail, but I'm compelled by the desire to be efficient in government, get it right. I think we can get it right with some additional conversation. We have been at this for a long time. And again, I want to thank the public, both here and online, for coming during the middle of the day, sacrificing your time to be with us. I know some put off vacations and time with family to sit with to hear your commissioners pontificate. So forgive us and thank you for your patience with the process. But so you have yes, Commissioner Teal.
Yeah, so a little point that actually we've never heard raised is to make this allowance, to deal with this working from home, namely the home property is the home base for the business. I mean, we know this is going on right now. It is a quick drive around our rural residential properties, and we can see it now. You've got contractor vehicles with trailers that are on the properties, after 5 o'clock every evening. And so there's an aspect of enforcement capability that, Mr. Glesner actually spoke about, that right now it's something not even being enforced because it would not be a criteria for permitting to be allowed. And so, if it is something happening without authorization that is contrary to our zoning, one advantage of moving forward on this amendment right now is that actually it introduces an enforcement capability because, people have talked about, well, we don't know, and then they say something bad. Well, I would introduce something that we don't know that could be a positive. We could have businesses coming into the county to be permitted on a Class 2 home occupation business, which then, as Mr. Carey just talked about, opens them up to be inspected and actually for enforcement to occur, because that's something that's just not happening right now. It's like how many people speed on I-25, but if there's not a state trooper there, they don't get a ticket. Because I would assert that we likely have, if not hundreds, we definitely have more than 100 businesses operating as unpermitted Class 2 home occupations, and they'll never come in to be permitted unless we make this amendment, because they're just going to keep operating until a report comes in, and then we have to enforce the current regulation.
Well, I find that compelling as well, and I think that addresses part of the concern that I have around monitoring. I have no doubt that in the rural communities, citizens are making 4 round trips per day in large vehicles to accommodate businesses and issues that they're addressing on site. I have no doubt that that's occurring. And where it does become non-residential and commercial, and there's dust and noise and traffic and issues, I also know that the citizens of this community will call and will file, as Mr. Carey will certainly affirm, you get those complaints and then you would go out and address those. So I'm just trying to walk through the hypothetical here. So on an annual basis, you go out and monitor these businesses. If you have a particular complaint or issue at a residence, you're going to hear about that and you will go out and monitor that issue for compliance. Am I getting that right?
Correct.
Okay. I mean, that sounds like a lot of government oversight as it is. And again, we go back to that line that the residential character of the community would not be changed, could not be changed. So that would be the criteria and the lens through which you establish whether that citizen is complying or not complying with the zoning resolution, right? Okay. So well, good. In my mind, at least as one commissioner, that addresses my issue on monitoring, and I'm okay there. The second issue that I think was brought up well by the citizens, and I realize that pictures can say a lot, and sometimes they don't say the right thing. Sometimes they provide a suggestion of what's going on, but the issue of number of cars. So can staff speak to how we are addressing the number of cars?
Just in general?
Yeah.
We currently do not have anything in the zoning regulations that regulates the number of personal vehicles that someone can keep on their residential property. If the vehicle is licensed and operable, it can be stored anywhere in the open on the property. And then it depends on the zone district that a vehicle would be located in as to whether or not it would have to be currently registered and licensed to be stored outdoors. for, say, in our agricultural and our large rural residential zone districts, where we expect there to be, vehicles that are just used on a farm in a farm setting. They have to be operable, but not licensed to be kept outdoors on the property.
So is that even a germane consideration for a home occupations conversation, number of cars, or is that an entirely separate issue?
I would say that's a separate issue.
Yeah, I might too, and I think it goes back to you can still only have 4 round trips. So no matter how many vehicles you have, it's 4 round trips, right? Regardless of what vehicles and how they use those vehicles. Okay, so I think I am satisfied with 1 and 2. The last issue for me is the substance of the motion and the modification made by Commissioner Teal, and perhaps the legal issues associated with the process. I don't want to see our process challenged or subject to additional problematic elements if we can do it right and follow a process that we have. But I just want to make sure I'm understanding the specific changes that are being suggested. So is staff able to pull that up? Okay.
Would you like me to pull up the current Exhibit A, Commissioner, which is the proposed regulations already or would you like the red lines up?
Perhaps the red lines would be most helpful to understand the motion for modification.
All right, let's do that.
So this in front of you is the current red line version, Commissioners. If you would like me to zoom in, let me know.
I'm 46. I wish my eyes still could see that well, but they just do not. So we'll have to expand that a little bit. Okay. CJ, do you want to walk us through the modifications as suggested by Commissioner Teal?
Yes, sir. As Commissioner Teal stated, we can. Do you want me to start at the beginning, Commissioner, or just the modifications?
Why don't you walk us through the current status and then the proposed change by Commissioner Teal?
Okay, perfect. The first one would be Section 230501. Currently, the red lines read, such use may be conducted within the dwelling, accessory structure, or both. And then 23050101, the total area within the dwelling for all home occupation shall not exceed 50% of the first floor area of the dwelling. And 23050102, the total area within the accessory structure for all home occupation shall not exceed 3,000 square feet. And Commissioner Teal, correct me if I'm wrong, you would like these two strucken out, and you would like 230501 just to read, such use may be conducted within the dwelling, accessory structure, or both.
Correct.
So, and then do you want, maybe Commissioner Teal or staff would like to speak to your impression of the implications of that modification?
I'd be happy to speak to it following a staff assessment.
One thing that this would do, because it would leave the strikeout in the currently existing 2305.01, is it would change us from the current limit, which is 50% of the floor area of the residence, or 1,500 square feet of the accessory, to having no limits on the amount of space within the residence that could be used, and no limits on the area within that accessory structure that could be used. So a 500 square foot accessory structure would only be able to have 500, but a 5,000 square foot accessory structure could, all 5,000 square feet could be used for the the class 2 home occupation with that change. So that would be the net change from what exists in the regulations as they exist today, and if the amendment were made as included in the motion.
Let me just ask, so you're saying there's no upper limit to the square footage of an accessory dwelling unit? If you strike that?
If you strike those two lines, because you would not, if you didn't undo the striking that you see in 2305.01, you would have no upper limit.
So if I may, Chair.
Please.
So the nature, and of course, why in the world would this be a positive thing? There's one guiding principle that we began with when we started talking about this, is that storage for business equipment would be inside the structures. No outside storage would be allowed. And then we have heard from several people in MacArthur Ranch that actually they are not permitted to build 3,000 square foot outbuilding structures. They are limited to, and by all means, folks, shout out a correction if needed, but I believe it was 1,200 square feet in their neighborhood, okay? So what we're doing here by eliminating a 101 and a 102 is we're eliminating that confusion that we heard so often from those neighborhoods that don't even permit a 3,000 square foot outbuilding structure. Yes, the county does. As a matter of fact, we always, the county, the 3,000 square foot building structure that the county allows is actually for a detached garage. It has come up several times in this discussion, and I think it has not been something seized upon by people, that in rural residential, we also permit much larger structures than 3,000 square feet. So my assertion for this strikeout, my justification for this strikeout, is that this is where we are seeing the mismatch between our neighborhoods. That a permitted structure of 3,000 square feet is allowed for a detached garage, and yet they don't allow a permitted, it goes against their covenants. We remove this and we revert merely to be such use may be conducted within, and I don't know, maybe we need to make that uppercase if legally sufficient, within the dwelling, accessory structure, or both. Well, then for the folks in MacArthur Ranch, who merely, they only allow horse stables, essentially for allowed outbuildings. Well, for their neighborhood, there is no contradiction. A person seeking a Class 2 home occupation must work within what is permitted within the neighborhood. Whereas we do know of other rural residential neighborhoods that actually they do allow much larger structures. They allow barns, as the county allows barns, which actually we heard today is the source of that very large building that could go up to 3 stories, because that's the difference between a barn, multi-story, versus a detached garage. So my assertion would be, my advocacy for striking this as a modification to this amendment would be we remove the inherent contradictions we have heard over and over and over of specifying an upper limit that contradicts the local neighborhoods. Now it's merely going to be such use may be conducted within the dwelling, and within being very important, within the dwelling, accessory structure, or both. So no 3,000 square foot commercial buildings being introduced into neighborhoods. That's my justification for this modification.
So if I could have the opportunity to speak, is that okay?
Please.
Yeah, we've been going back and forth with a lot of ideas, and I keep thinking about the conversation and the counsel we had from our attorney. I would like to suggest that we take this back to our conference room, we work it out, we send it back to the Planning Commission, like our legal counsel advised us before this meeting started, and then we get it right the first time. We've already heard about some unintended consequences of the language that has been proposed. And, I hear over and over from this board that we work for all of you. And we've heard that 69% of the people who answered the survey did not want these changes to happen. So I think that it's incumbent upon us to put together something with the 3 of us, take it to the Planning Commission like our legal counsel advised us should be done. Let's get it right. Let's not leave a hanging Chad. So if we do it today on the dais, someone can take us to court, we get further behind than we already are, and be respectful of the time of everybody who's already here listening. So I would like to make a motion that we continue this until a future appointment, a future date.
Well, point of order. We do actually have a motion on the floor that has not been concluded. And if I may, Chair, rebut my colleague.
Yeah, and just to clarify, we do have a motion on the floor and we're in discussion on that motion.
Yeah, I mean, I do appreciate Commissioner Thomas's suggestion that this is something that we work out. But I would ask that we don't do that. And I would ask we don't do that because we've already heard during this process, as many times occur, accusations of alternate reasons why this is going to happen. We've already heard from several people that this was a bad idea already cooked up behind closed doors. Great. Let's resolve it here. Let's not go behind closed doors. Let's do it here in the public forum where being recorded so everyone can see. And oh, by the way, Commissioner Thomas, were this to be subject to legal review. Now, my assertion is these are de minimis changes. I have offered a de minimis modifications. They are not substantial, nor do they go to the heart of the amendment, which actually, guys, it is the definition of substantial, means does address the heart of an issue. We're talking about the accessories. We're talking about the associated factors here. That's what I have offered to modify. Let's do it here. Let's get it taken care of so that the critics to this amendment, they can see it, they can understand it. The supporters also can see it, can understand it. To Ms. Pointer's comment on the lack of education that I guess we have offered to the public on what qualifies a Class 1, Class 2 permitting. Well, this is a part of the record. And then if it is subject to judicial review, you know what? We've already had a very substantial conversation that, as we all know, that judicial review will go to, is it substantial? And then what are the motivations and what is the intent? I would offer that this discussion could be, even subject to legal review, our best evidence on that this modification is not substantial and as to what the intent is. Abe, you're obviously a big fan of your chosen profession, and I think of how much judicial review is really substantial based upon the expression of intent, the expression of analysis, and that is always subject to public review. Well, let's keep going. Let's see if we can get this right here, right now, and that way our intent is known, our intent is understood. And by the way, I just want to make sure everybody understands where I was coming from when I introduced this. I just want people to be able to work from their homes, be able to have a business and put it in their garage where it's not going to disturb the neighbors and be open for business and be able to live the lives they want to live, providing their own employment, providing their own jobs so that they can raise their family, take care of their family, and contribute to our society.
Well, thank you for the discussion, Board. I think it's really insightful, and it's certainly helping me to have the discussion. I think thematically, no doubt, where I come from is a place of balance and wanting to ensure that there is the greatest degree for a citizen to be able to use their property as they see fit, balanced again their neighbor's need to ensure that there is not noise, traffic, light pollution, and issues that impact their quiet enjoyment of their property. So that balancing, I think, is what we have endeavored with staff to try to accomplish for many months now. I will say, and I say it often, and I know Ms. Biggs will remind me of it, that we We do not want to do things to the public. We do things with the public. And I hope you're seeing by all the wrangling and the meetings and the town halls that we've had that we're really doing this with you. And I compliment Commissioner Teal for wanting to continue to engage today. I will say what I hear us doing is further study. I mean, we're right in this moment further studying this and trying to look at unintended consequences. I spent nearly 20 years as a land use attorney, and I don't want to put on my lawyer hat here and start doing, legal drafting. I do appreciate the counsel that was provided by our legal counsel for the county, Chris Pratt, around process drafting. I wish I was as bright as Commissioner Teal, and it sounds like you have a very good handle on this. And again, his engagement with the community, I really applaud. I'll just say I need more study, and I would like the opportunity to see some language that our county council has vetted with staff, contemplating what we heard from the PC, from our citizens, what we heard today, so that we can come up with some final language that makes sense, because I think we're awfully close. I think we're really close.
Well, then Commissioner, may I offer to withdraw the motion? And then may I offer a substitute motion?
Absolutely.
And please understand, this is a motion to modify. Again, I really don't want to walk out of this room with a vague promise to study anything. I'd like us to get to a starting point. So my motion to modify would be to do a modification of 230501 to read, to wit, such uses may be conducted within the dwellings permitted and, strike that, let me start again. Such uses may be conducted within the permitted and allowed accessory structure or both. And hang on, let me make sure that sounds like English. Such uses may be conducted within the dwelling, comma, associated, permitted, and allowed accessory structure, or both. And direction to staff, and CJ, I might ask you to read that back to me just so that we can get that right, because it's very important. And this is a critical feature of, we've heard so many times from MacArthur Ranch that this 3,000 square foot limit does not jive with their associated structures. Yet, here, the issue with the Bacons, they do have a 3,000 square foot accessory structure, but it has been permitted by the county and allowed under their covenants. So here's my logic. When we talk about a MacArthur Ranch, first of all, it's only something that can be permitted by the county, this accessory structure, but also then allowed by your neighborhood. So I wonder, that's my logic. CJ, can you try to read that back to me before we conclude the motion?
One point of clarification first, Commissioner Teal. As you will read on 230501, it's hard to see up on the screen, but under the very first line on the very right, we still have one. So it would read, such use may be conducted within the dwelling, one associated, permitted, and allowed accessory structure, or both.
That would be, thank you very much, CJ. I really appreciate that. Chair, that is my motion to modify 230501, thereby striking 23050101 and striking 23050102. I do ask for a second, and I'm willing to speak in favor of the motion.
Okay, again, for decorum, I will second the motion. Is there any further discussion on this?
I would like to say just a couple of things. While this meeting has been going on, Commissioner Teal has accused me of violating zoning regulations for the few times that I work at home, usually on Sunday nights when I'm preparing for the week. So staff, I think I heard you say that it's okay for me to be at home in my office reading and working. Is that right?
That's correct.
And so my point in bringing this out is that we are not experts on what all of this says, what all of these regulations say. There are things that we have heard that we have missed, that staff has pointed out. And that's why I want us to just continue this, work together, figure out what we're going to do, what we're going to extend to the Planning Commission, and then come back here. I also heard Commissioner Teal say that he wants us to do it here in the open and not behind closed doors. And we don't do work sessions behind closed doors. Many of you here have been upstairs on the 3rd floor in our conference room listening to us. In fact, you even have the opportunity to interact with us in some occasions. So we don't do these things behind closed doors. And so that's why I'm asking you. Commissioner Layden has also said he's not ready to do something now. He wants more input. And I'm asking that we continue this and follow the process that our legal attorney has asked us to follow.
Point of order, Chair. I do have a motion. I am asking for a second.
Okay. So there was a first and second on the floor. Is there any further discussion on this motion?
Point of order, Mr. Chair, there was no second yet.
I seconded.
Oh, did you?
Decorum.
That's
I
correct.
believe I did. If I didn't, I thought I did. Okay.
If I can just have a moment to make a comment. Hey, Commissioner Thomas, it's okay if you work from home. No meaning to accuse there at all. I was hoping to make sure I established my understanding of what was done. Thank you, Chair. I speak in favor of the motion.
Thank you, and I heard that. So I do want to caution the board against drafting from the dais. It is not our role to act as counsel for the county. It is the role of county counsel to act as legal counsel for this board. So even though I certainly feel qualified to draft, I think I would prefer to. That is not my role here, and I would encourage the board to direct county counsel working with staff to identify language that inheres the comments that you heard today and provide us an opportunity as a board in a public work session to have a discussion around that language that accomplishes all of the goals that Commissioner Teal has raised, in addition to the issues raised by our citizens. I think we're awfully close, and I spent too many years in private practice to know that the devil's in the details, and haste makes waste. And if we have an oversight here, I'd hate to be a year down the road in litigation over an issue that we might not be seeing right now. And I'll take responsibility for that. Commissioner Teal, you might see this perfectly well right now. I'm not sure that I do.
Well, very well. I mean, obviously, this is something we got to do as a team. So I withdraw the motion. Chair, may I make a motion, though, to direct staff to bring back to the board at a scheduled work session a revised version of 2305.01 per the last amendment that was, the last modification that was offered.
And Commissioner, I know there's a first. Before, I'm not sure I'm prepared to second that. That's awfully close. I would like to give our staff the flexibility to be a little bit nimble with this, and if there are other provisions that reflect the language that we're modifying that need further review or revision, just to ensure that staff has the flexibility to provide us language that accomplishes what you're trying to do.
I'm happy to amend my motion in accordance with your last statement.
Okay. We have a first. Is there a second?
Would you mind just stating again so I understand what the motion is, please?
Yeah, CJ, could you do us a favor? Read, well, Commissioner, do you need to reread, have CJ reread the, the modification, or do you need me to restate the full motion, ma'am?
My understanding is your motion, if I may, is to direct county council with staff to provide language that accomplishes the objectives that you and the board and our citizens have raised today. And you're directing that to a work session.
Absolutely. I mean, staff does have a starting point in language that was preferred on the prior modification that was withdrawn. But yes, otherwise, that is the motion.
So the motion is for staff to work together to bring us something at a work session that we can continue to work on this.
Correct.
Okay, I will second that.
We have a first and second on the floor. Is there any further discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that passes 3-0.
Chair, if it pleases the board, I would also ask that ask to direct legal counsel and staff to bring back to the board at a scheduled work session a revision of this amendment whereby 230509 reverts back to original language. And that is my second. That is my first. I ask for a second.
May I see what that language is?
Yeah, 230509.
Well, and if it helps the board, I'm wondering if your previous motion accomplishes this as well. My assumption, and maybe I'm assuming wrong, is that staff would also be bringing back language that reflects this potential modification, but maybe it bears further discussion.
Again, Chair, the motion is merely to direct staff that this is an area that I believe we need to address. I mean, this has been a cause of confusion, both for the Planning Commission, for if you review their meeting, but also for our residents. And so, absolutely inclusive of your last comment.
So let me just ask our attorney, Chris Pratt, do we need an additional motion, or does staff have the direction it needs for us to move to a work session?
I would defer to staff to tell us if they have enough to move forward with direction. I would just for clarification's sake, I know these are worded as motions. This has the effect of tabling for further study, and I want to make sure that we're clear that's the effect. We do not have a date certain that we're moving towards. This will come back to you when it's ready, and then it will at that point go back to the Planning Commission and then come back to you.
So let me speak to that issue. I believe that Commissioner Teal raises an important point, which is expediting this process. Can you give us a sense of when is the next Planning Commission hearing?
The next Planning Commission hearing is July 18th, next Monday.
Next Monday. So CJ and staff, do you have enough time to be able to provide us some language so that we can get this before the Planning Commission on Monday?
Yes, Commissioner.
Any further discussion from the board on that timeline?
Let me just clarify. If they're going to put something together, don't the three of us have to talk and make sure it's what we, and I've been looking at the calendar, I don't see that we have time to get together the rest of this week. Could we do it, does it need to be posted for Planning Commission if we got together Monday morning?
It would need to be posted at least 24 hours prior, so since it's a Monday meeting, that would be Friday for us to make the 18th. Now, it doesn't have to go on the 18th. It could go on a subsequent meeting, but that would push us into August.
Well, one thing that can be done too, and maybe we don't need to expedite it at this level, but no doubt staff could have meetings with each commissioner prior to the end of the week regarding the revised language, and then we could still potentially, conceivably post for a Planning Commission meeting on Monday. But I deferred to my colleagues.
By the way, just a point of order, Mr. Chair. This is merely a motion for direction to staff. Again, we heard from our Planning Commission to get this right. We've heard from members who came, from our residents who came to speak to let's get this right. So this is merely a motion for direction to staff in an effort to get it right. A motion to table, a motion to continue, which I will speak to preference for, can obviously follow. This is merely a motion for direction to staff.
So if I could just ask a couple of questions in clarification. I thought tabling basically was killing something, as opposed to continuing. And I think there's some legal precedent about daisy chain kind of decision-making also that we need to consider and not get ourselves in trouble with.
Several items to address there, Commissioner. While it is possible for staff to reach out to each of you individually and discuss this item, it would be nearly impossible for staff to know what you as a body have decided, as each of you may have different input to give them, and they would not be able to share the input each of you has given with the other. And so there would at some point need to be a work session combined with you in order to, if the intent is to get guidance directly from you as to what the wording will be. That addresses the one issue. As to the other issue, Commissioner, tabling an item does not kill it per se. Tabling simply means it's continued to a date uncertain. That date could still be soon, but it is not a date certain. And that item would need to be republished and renoticed as proper as if it was coming new. And so that can create somewhat of a delay. If an item is continued, it is to a date certain, and there's no need to republish, and so that is generally a quicker way to turn something around if you want a quicker turnaround.
So, Chris, can we table to the next available work session for the Board of County Commissioners to review language that staff has prepared? I've heard that staff would be able to do that within a week's time. With a date certain that would then, assuming we have agreement, go forward to the next available Planning Commission date.
This is a hearing, so we would have to continue the item. The date certain would have to be to another hearing date in which this item will be heard. What happens in between now and that hearing
Okay,
is
well,
a different
I
matter.
can deal with that. I can schedule work sessions. Look, how about if we can't do the next Planning Commission meeting, how about the subsequent Planning Commission meeting following this Monday? So when is that scheduled to be?
I would have to defer to staff.
The next Planning Commission meeting is August 1st, Monday.
So my suggestion for the board for a potential motion is to table this for further study to a date certain.
That would be a continuance.
Or I'm sorry. Then we will a motion to continue this item for the August 1st Planning Commission hearing. And my intent will be to schedule a work session for us to review language.
For clarification, we would be continuing it to the next commissioner meeting after August 1st, that you would be able to hear this item. And that would give the Planning Commission time to recertify it and send it back to you with changes. And then at your meeting, you would hear the item. So the continuance would have two parts. It would be a continuance primarily to the next meeting you will have, that you will hear this item. As part of the motion, and I can work out the wording for you, also directing staff to bring changes, to work with you at the next available work session to be determined, and to bring those changes to the Planning Commission by August 1st so that you may hear the item at that next Board of County Commissioners meeting, which would be August 9th.
August 9th.
I think a so moved would be appropriate here. If somebody,
Okay, well, the point of order, Mr. Chair, the motion on the floor is to direction to staff pertaining to reverting Section 230509 to the original language in order to prepare for it to come back as a part of the process we just talked about. That is the motion on the floor right now. I would ask for a decision, if we could please. And then, Mr. Chair, I am so prepared to continue to a date certain. I can't tell you how prepared I am right now.
I think you're prepared right now. And forgive me, I thought that we were modifying your motion to reflect the intent and the conversation that we're having here. So if you want to revert to that original motion, I think what I'm hearing from counsel is that he's stating your motion in a way that will allow us to do this procedurally.
Oh yeah, the motion on the floor is merely direction to staff to address 230509. And of course, Chair, that includes your statement to the effect of giving legal and planning staff the ability to craft it appropriately for being presented to the board at a subsequent time. The motion on the floor has nothing to do yet with dealing with this amendment to our zoning resolution at a later time. Motion on the floor is just directing staff on a specific point to bring back to us.
I think we're belaboring the process more than we need to,
Oh, my
Commissioner,
goodness.
and I
Oh, yeah,
apologize.
sir.
So
Absolutely.
I get it, but perhaps, so I would be a no on that. So I'll, if you want to call the question, we can go ahead and vote on that motion if you're not making a change. So
Yeah, call
all
the
those
question.
Okay, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
No.
Aye, and that fails 2-1. Mr. Pratt, could you restate the full motion that we are attempting to accomplish here, and then I will accept a so moved.
Well, hang on. No, we haven't, I can make a motion that can probably take us to conclusion if it pleases the board.
That would be outstanding, Commissioner Teal.
All right. All right. If it pleases the board, I do have a motion to continue a resolution adopting amendments to Douglas County Zoning Resolution, Section 23, Home Occupations, Project File DR 2022-001 to our next to the public hearing on August 9th, 2022. And Doug is nodding, so I do ask for a second.
So I will second that. Do we need to add so it goes to the Planning Commission on August 1st?
I think for clarity for the public, so that they know where to be in order to be involved in this process, a friendly amendment may be helpful to add, and directing staff to work with you to ensure that the Planning Commission can certify a copy of these changes for your these changes at its August 1st meeting.
I am willing to so amend the motion.
And with that, I will second it.
Okay, we have a first and second as amended on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, and that motion carries. Thank you very much, everyone, for being with us today. We are adjourned.
The things you learn.
Castle Rock, I was going to say.